Hi, my name is Cody. I'm a software engineer here in San Francisco, and in this video series we are recreating Lovable from scratch using LangChain and LangGraph. Okay, so we have a pretty good starting point here. We haven't spent a lot of time in it. I started earlier today. I've been taking breaks, not pushing too hard, but you see we have a very simple, we just have 3 pages is really all it is, 3 files. And, one thing is that this is powered, like the large language model that's kind of powering all the coding is O4 mini. Now, O4 mini has a very high context window, has 200K context window for input, and then it has a 100K context window for output. So I think that we can actually get pretty far with just using this kind of structure where it's just one big kind of massive HTML file. And I actually want to see how far we can kind of push that. So right now we have this game of Snake that we're starting with, and I want to try and turn this into something a little bit more modern, a little bit cooler, and let's just see how far we can get with it. So I'm going to say, rather than having this boring, old, outdated arcade game of Snake, let's turn it into a modern 3D first-person point of view game of Snake, where the user can control the snake by pressing up, down, right, left on the arrow keys to move its position in space. Let's just try this and see how far we can get. Looks like our loading indicator is doing something a little bit funny, so might have to fix that later. Now, this is a little bit of a longer prompt, and what I'm going to start doing is actually going over into our tracing project and just kind of watching the prompt as it plays out in real time. So in this case, you can see that the output of the first call was write code, which is exactly right. Let's go ahead and click in here, and we should be able to see and you can see right here, the status is pending. So far that we have the prompt size in this is about 1,100 tokens. Probably most of that's actually coming from the HTML page that we are sending in here. It's a pretty small HTML page right now, but what you'll see is that the token size of this prompt is going to it's going to get pretty big pretty fast. Okay, so I guess I will be back. Okay, here we go. This is barely finished. So it's 3770 tokens. You see right here that had 14. Let's see, it had 1,100 prompt tokens and roughly 2,600 completion tokens. So it made a little bit of a bigger HTML page. Let's go and come back to our agent here. Okay, so it did this. Okay, so did it make the game though? Let's refresh this. Yes, you see here it made a game, but it's not really working. So let's go ahead and just tell it. This game is not working. I don't see my snake head in first person point of view. The game doesn't start. It's just a black screen that I don't get to see. Okay, let's go ahead and send this message in. Let's go back to Langsmith. Let's refresh this. Okay, it looks like it made its decision to write code, which is the right decision here. You see now the total tokens is a little bit larger, 1,237. Yeah, and I will be back once it's done. All right, now this is a first example of an issue that we're running into, which is, look at the response here. First person snake in this code is literally just the camera. In fact, did it just do respond naturally? I mean, so that's funny. So it responded with write code, and yet it didn't follow the instruction, right? So if you look at it, then if you look at the prompt, it says you are a chatbot that builds full HTML pages. Please take the user's message and turn it into a fully formatted HTML document. We will include the existing HTML document content, which is here. Then we have this whole doc type down here, and then we say, if the user is just asking a question and doesn't have intention to create or change the page, then just respond naturally and answer the question. If they do intend to make a change or instruct you to build something, etc., then respond exactly with the full HTML document content with no additional commentary. Okay, you know what? So this bottom part actually potentially threw it off. It seems like it made a decision and it wanted to respond naturally. You see here it's getting a little sassy with me, right? First person snake in this code is literally just the camera. You won't ever see a snake head mesh unless you explicitly parent one to the camera. What you're seeing is a black background plus a very dark grid. It's possible to pick out. I mean, I kind of do like this. The problem is that this this went down the path of write code. Like this probably could have gone on the path of respond naturally if it didn't like that, you know, if it didn't like what it said. Now one thing that we can do though is if we let the large language model have an intermediary step where it can take the initial user message that I first sent it, basically saying, you know, please, you know, rather than having this boring snake game, go ahead and implement a much bigger game. If we take that idea and we have an intermediary large language model prompt where we can basically tell it to take the user message and take the existing HTML page and think through and write up a high-level game plan of how it's going to accomplish what the user wants it to do. And the benefit of doing that is it actually lets the large language model have a little bit more just kind of thinking time, or a little bit more of like a game plan when it goes to attack it. You know, it's kind of like, you know, imagine it had the output of this prompt was then fed in as the next user message, essentially telling the large language model to implement what this is, you know, saying to do. In fact, we can even test that right now by just saying, you know, in fact, let's just take out this last part of the sentence. Make the floor/grid more visible, lighten up the scene, give yourself a head model. Okay, yeah, let's just copy this whole thing out. Let's go back to our chatbot here. Let's just go ahead and paste this. Oh, but you know what? We lost the initial page, right? We lost the initial page that it had because it overwrote it. So this is definitely a limitation of our agent that we need to fix. We're just going to get a little hacky here, and let's actually go back to the initial response that it had, and we're just going to copy and paste that response out. So it had this write code, and then let's go down to this output. This was the actual output that it had originally created. So I'm going to copy this onto my clipboard. Let's go back into our project. Let's go to page.html. Let's paste this in. Whoops, let's come into here, and let's refresh our page. This should bring this back up how it was. Perfect. I'm going to paste in the message saying, please follow these instructions to make the change to the page. Okay, and then there was one thing in there, though, I didn't like. It said optional. Yeah, let's get rid of this optional. Okay, let's go ahead and send this in. And essentially what we're doing is we're just giving it much more clear instructions on what we expect. Now, there's a way that we can actually build this into the initial thought process, which if you've used Lovable or Replit or, you know, some other advanced agents that write code, it will actually do this step automatically, where you'll give it an initial prompt and then it will have an intermediary step where it will basically say, I think the user wants me to do this, and based on what he says, here's the game plan that I'm going to make. And then it takes that game plan as the output of one prompt, of the first prompt, and then it feeds that into the next plan where it actually goes and implements that design decision. So we'll implement that here. Just really quick though, let's go ahead and refresh this page and see if it actually followed instructions. See, I don't think it really did. So this is where we start to run into just some limitations of what we're working with. So one first step that we'll take to try to solve this is by doing exactly what I just said. We're actually going to create a whole new prompt where we're going to tell the large language model to make a game plan based on the code changes that the user wants to see, so that it just gives it a little bit of a more structured approach. And let's see if that actually solves any of these problems. So let's go back into LangSmith. As always, whenever we're implementing a new prompt or some sort of change, I really like to start with the prompt playground. And I'm going to say, you are receiving a message from a user who wants to make modifications or create or rewrite an existing HTML page. Please take their message and think through a high-level game plan, or we'll say and respond with a high-level game plan of how you can implement those changes within this HTML page, given both the user's intent and the existing HTML page. If you need to, you can rewrite the page from scratch. Just mention that as the first step in the game plan. Here is the user's message, or I'm going to say, here is the existing HTML page content. Go HTML content, or HTML. See, I think it's existing HTML content. Yeah, there we go. Okay. Here's existing HTML, and here's the user's message. And then we'll say user message. Okay, so this is just kind of an intermediary step. Let's go ahead and save this and say, we'll say design planning prompt. Let's make it public. Let's hit save. Okay. Now what we can do, whoops. Okay, so we saved that. We're looking at the design, the Llama-bot design planning prompt. We can edit in Playground, and what we can actually do that's really cool is we can actually go into our LangSmith project. Let's go into our tracing project, and we can take an existing input and actually run it through that exact prompt without having to go back to the user interface and kicking it off. One of the advantages of using LangSmith. So let's go ahead and come into this initial step where we said this game is not working. Okay, we're just going to copy and paste this out. So we will include the existing HTML document content. Okay, so let's grab this HTML content. We'll just come down here and save this. Let's come into our Playground. Let's paste this into the existing content. Let's come back here. Here's the user's message. Here we go. Let's copy this out, put it into our second input. Let's go ahead and also change our prompt to be 40 mini, or sorry, 04 mini. Cool. Let's go ahead and hit start, and let's see what the output is. Okay, streaming back. All right, so now it's going to make this kind of game plan here. Here's a rough step-by-step plan for both diagnosing why you're only seeing black and then adding a visible head. Verify the basics and surface any errors. Okay. Okay, so let's go ahead and we're going to copy this out now. And the next step is let's actually go back to our other prompt, which is going to be our simple generate HTML prompt. And we're going to fork this. And it's going to be a simple to be after design, generate HTML prompt. Or I'm going to say after planning, generate HTML. Okay, let's just do that. Let's go ahead and keep this public. Let's hit fork. Excellent. Let's edit this in the Playground, and we're going to add a. We're going to say here is the game plan on how to implement the. Yeah, I'm going to say here is the plan and requirements for you when writing this HTML code. I'm going to say let's say design plan or something like that. Let's call it that. Okay, so let's just double check this. You are a chatbot that builds full HTML pages. Please take the user message, the design requirements, and the existing HTML content, and make the and write the full HTML document implementing the design requirements based on the user's message, based on the user's intent and message, and the existing HTML content. And then we're just going to say, here is the existing HTML content. Cool. And then let's actually get rid of this part. Since we broke that out into its own node, we actually don't need to go through with that. Let's go ahead and commit this. Awesome. Now let's go ahead and test this. So we're going to put in the existing HTML code that we had copied out earlier. We're going to put in the design plan that our other prompt just created. And then let's go ahead and put in the user message. And then let's go ahead and change this to be 04 mini. And let's go ahead and run this and see what the output is. So you can see, hopefully you can see that this is a lot easier to kind of do this initial testing and experimenting in LangSmith rather than having to like go and like change the code and run it manually through the user interface and like refresh and just do all this stuff in Fast API and in Chrome and changing the Python code. We're just kind of like thinking through and just testing some of the prompts to see if it like is able to do anything that's a little bit better. In this case, it wrote some HTML code. I'm just going to copy this. Let's just throw it into our page.html just to run it quickly. Okay, and now let's open this up. Let's refresh this. Click to play. See, it just still has some issues. Why is this having issues? Oh, look at this. Okay, you can see it actually has these JavaScript issues. Cannot read properties of undefined reading x 3.min.js. Oh, look, yeah, it's going crazy right here. Okay, well, let's just try this one more time. I'm gonna go ahead and manually, so we're doing things that don't scale, right? We're just doing something very simple. We're just experimenting. I'm gonna go ahead and copy this error message out. Let's go back into Langsmith, and we're in our same tool here. What I'm gonna do is I'm actually gonna put the user message in here. I'm gonna say this game still isn't working. Here's an error message from the console, from the browser console with an issue that we're having. The game just isn't loading or working, and we're getting thousands of these error messages. Let's go ahead and paste that error message in. Okay, and then let's go ahead and take our design plan, or let's go ahead and take our output here. In fact, let's open up another playground. We're actually jumping the gun here. We're in the wrong prompt, so we ought to go into our design planning prompt, because this is the one that's actually going to create the game plan. So what we're going to do, let's edit in playground. Let's paste in our existing HTML. Our existing HTML, which this is actually the output that we just barely got from the other node. And then let's put in this message: this game still isn't working. We put in the console browser error. Let's go ahead and just hit start and just see what this comes up with. So it's kind of thinking through. It's kind of like, wanting to design how it might be able to fix it. It's basically saying some ideas. Okay, so let's go ahead and let's take this game plan now, and let's go back to our other prompt, which it will feed into this prompt. Okay, and we are the after planning. So let's go ahead and we're going to take our design plan, put in this new design plan. We have our same message. Let's take this output from the HTML, make sure that this is just the actual thing, the actual right HTML, and then let's go ahead and click start, and this should run it again. And let's just see what it comes up with. Okay, it's streaming it, and we'll see if this works. If not, this might be a little bit of debugging and having to really kind of think through how we're going to design this and change this. So, okay, I just finished that up. Let's go ahead and copy this out. Let's go back to cursor. Let's go into our page.html. Let's delete this out. Let's paste this. Let's jump back into our application. Let's refresh the page here. Moment of truth. Oh, look at that. All right, it's not perfect, but that's way better. Look at that. Oh yeah, you can hold the right and left. I'm just holding the right arrow key down. Oh look, you can go. Oh, okay, so it doesn't actually change your orientation because there's a 2D plane. So we didn't actually implement these nodes into our application yet, but this is just an example of how if you feed and chain these kind of prompts into each other, you can get it to start to like think a little bit differently and think a little bit more, I guess, agentically. Because the reality is you're not just going to have one prompt that like as these systems get more advanced, you have to feed prompts into each other. And originally LangChain, like that was the name, chain, right? Because you're chaining prompts together. And so that's just a characteristic of what we're doing. And the other benefit of doing it like that is that you can break these prompts down into smaller and smaller and smaller and more granular steps, such that you can really debug and try to figure out what step in the process is going wrong. And when you combine that with the tracing here in our project, where you can actually genuinely look at each individual step, then you start to get into a place where you can actually debug these things that are otherwise extremely challenging to debug. Imagine if it was printing all of this output here into our fast API development logs. And then imagine too if your prompts were saved as just like a static string or like a file in the project, and you're having to like tweak them. And then imagine too you had to come in to the chatbot here and refresh and like make changes through the whole stack and then refresh it and run it from the browser. The iteration loop just takes a long time. And this is like, this is still a very simple project. Imagine if you had thousands of files, and imagine if you had, hundreds of prompts and they interacted with each other in weird ways. And then imagine you put it into production and you have users who are doing things that you maybe didn't initially plan for. And imagine trying to debug it using just like traditional kind of server logging tools. And I know there's different aggregate tools and things that you can use, but none of them were really built from the ground up with agents in mind and with stringing these LLM prompts together. And that's why LangSmith is such an insanely valuable tool. That's why we start with LangChain from the beginning, because it's very easy to bring LangSmith into it once you get that stuff going and to have all the traces. And that's why we save the prompts in LangSmith as well, so we can commit them and have different versions, and we can fork them and we can look at the runs. So if you haven't seen the value yet, I'm hoping you're starting to in the LangChain ecosystem. And I think as this video series progresses even more, you'll start to, there'll be even more concrete examples of why we're doing certain things and why we're using LangSmith and LangChain. So anyways, in the next video, we're going to actually take this idea of splitting the prompts out. We just kind of verified that that's a good direction to go in using LangSmith Playground and the tracing tools. But now in the next video, we're going to actually implement it within the model, or sorry, within the app.py, so that we can just do it all in the browser, and it kind of works that way. So see you in the next video. Thanks.